Hello, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see, at least in terms of you actually seeing my face, because it's been a minute now. I've been doing the Horse's Mouth podcast. Thank you to those who have been watching and listening and liking and stuff like that. I appreciate it. Oh, but I did say that I wanted to just save my vlogs and face-to-face vlogs for reviewing, and I'm happy to be back and reviewing face-to-face in front of the camera. For this particular review in terms of the Batman, because it's a movie that I actually enjoy, a project that I actually enjoy. If you've seen any of my other reviews, you probably know that I am very particular about just jumping on something and saying that I enjoyed it and I loved it. I'm very picky and particular about music, about art in general, and also particularly about movies and what makes a good movie. But I think you need people like me who are very picky and won't just say something's good just to say something's good, but actually, like, when we genuinely like something, you know that we at least genuinely like it, because we are hard to please. I think you need people like that in your life. Without further ado, I do want to go ahead and jump straight into this Batman review, because I did really enjoy it and I feel like there is a lot to talk about here with this Matt Reeves iteration, or like recreation, or his own interpretation of the Batman, along with, of course, Robert Pattinson as the new and upcoming Batman that just, sort of took on the mantle. I don't want to spend too much time going over and mulling over like the plot points. Oh, by the way, this will be spoiler-ish. I won't spoil the ending, but I will spoil a lot of things that happened within the movie, because I just don't know how I do an analytical review or give an analysis, an in-depth analysis, without talking about the specifics. So I won't spoil the end, but I will. That's usually how things go over here. I won't spoil the end, but I will spoil a little bit that's happened, of course, in the beginning and the middle. So yeah, I just wanted to give a quick summary. So the summary of this movie pretty much is that we have the Riddler is our main villain here. He is going around killing like high profile officials in government and in law enforcement, and also revealing some of their like more devious and corrupt secrets as well along the way. And Batman and Commissioner Gordon working together, essentially, along with, of course, Catwoman comes in, of course, Selena Kyle comes in to help as well. But they all join forces together to sort of figure out what the Riddler is trying to get at in the first place, what he's trying to say with all of these different little hidden messages of like revealing people's corruption, and what is the bigger picture to all this? Why is he doing all this? Also in hopes of trying to stop him, and also trying to figure out what his motive is and what he's planning and what he's up to. I want to address one thing before I even get started in terms of my analysis. People have been complaining. I haven't really watched too much. I haven't watched any at all. I haven't watched any other reviews. I just saw people on like Twitter or social media or something complaining about, it was a good movie except for the time, right? The time being about 3 hours, right? And I disagree with that sentiment that the movie was too long. I think that if the movie was shorter, as people say, maybe 2.5, I just don't think that some of the beats would work well if the movie was shorter. And there are so many different twists and turns in this movie, because it is a very detective like film, which I'm going to get into, which I really enjoyed as well. The aspect of actually seeing Batman as a real detective, because we haven't really seen that we've seen like him. I feel like this movie really highlighted, more so than the other films, it seemed to highlight Batman as a actual detective and doing detective work. Whereas like a lot of the other films, like specifically like Christian Bale, like sure, he was like trying to figure out things, but I don't know if that was the main focus to show him as Detective Batman. I don't know if that was the main focus of Christopher Nolan's Batman, to show Batman as a detective. I feel like Matt Reeves definitely, it feels like there is a big light shown, and he wants to highlight this man is, or could be, or could have been a detective, like if he, wasn't a little bit off his rocker. But I don't think a lot of the beats would work and a lot of the twists and turns and surprises would work if this movie was shorter. I think the movie is long because it wants to sort of take you down a path, then twist your idea of what you thought it was going to be, then take you down another path, then twist your idea of what you thought that was going to be, then take you down another path, and then boom, this is what it was. I think it won't work unless the movie is that long. Specifically, there is this riddle where the Batman and Commissioner Gordon are trying to figure out, like, the Riddler says something about a rat with wings, and they're trying to figure out who is the rat with wings and what is a rat with wings. And they first think like maybe it's Falcon, possibly. Maybe it's Penguin, possibly. Then Penguin goes, it might be Batman. Right? And so this is all takes course in the course of like maybe 45 minutes or so, like towards the end of the movie, or towards like sort of the end of the movie. And I don't think that, because even you as the audience member are trying to figure out what is a rat with wings? What does he mean by rat with wings? And I feel like it's almost like at the end we find out, of course, it's almost like a triple entendre or a double entendre, because the Riddler, of course, is revealed to be interested in the Batman, but also interested in the Falcon as well. So it kind of is a little bit of a double entendre there. In terms of the entirety of the movie, I really love this movie. One, because I feel like Matt Reeves has been paying attention to the conversations around Batman on social media for the last decade. I feel like the last decade there's been a lot of conversations about, or maybe the last decade, maybe the half a decade, there's been a lot of conversations on social media. I feel like, at least in the circles that I follow, there's been a lot of conversations about Batman being an unhinged character and and borderline a psychopath himself. And I feel like Matt Reeves has been paying attention to those conversations, and I feel like he definitely encompasses that in this film. Batman is Robert Pattinson's Batman feels very unhinged, feels very psychopathic, feels consumed by darkness, figuratively and literally, because the cinematography in terms of capturing that darkness, and the darkness almost seems bright in a way. It's so weird the way that he captures, there is very dark and gloom, and very dark and seedy and gloomy and just grungy, and he captures, I feel like, that darkness very well, and it almost has a brightness to it in a way, because clearly Gotham is consumed by darkness. I also felt like it was borderline horror when I was first introduced to Batman as well, or even Robert Pattinson's Batman all the way through feels very much like it was giving me Michael Myers vibes. Like it was giving me the boogeyman is coming to get you. I'm watching you. I'm coming to get you. The slow walks that Robert Pattinson does, kind of the same way that Michael Myers does as well. And then he sort of, Michael Myers, he just sort of lays into people and beats them up and throws them and kills them, of course. And that's how it kind of felt like, I'm in that first scene where Batman is coming out of the darkness. There is a Chinese man or Asian man, I don't know if he's Chinese, but he's Asian, and he's getting harassed off of the subway. He's getting harassed by this group of gang members that are covered in skulls. They spray painted their faces to look like skulls, and then Batman comes skulking out of the darkness like this, just all slow and steady and just very pensive, kind of like Michael Myers, and then he just lays into him, boom, 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 and then it's just, very quick ass whooping and beating. He doesn't kill anybody, he doesn't go that far. And also there's that scene where he's chasing after Penguin in the car, that car chase scene towards the end of the film, and he's chasing after him, and Penguin's thought that he's gotten away. He sort of managed to cause a traffic pile up on the highway. A whole truck flips over, there's a big explosion, and then the Batmobile comes just sort of straight through the flames, and then then he knocks over Penguin's car and flips it a bunch of times, and it's flipped over, and he's looking. Penguin, of course, is in his car upside down, looking out, and he just sees his feet slowly coming towards him, and he's looking so frightened and so scared. By the way, Colin Farrell, you did a great job. I didn't even know that was you. You did a magnificent job. I couldn't tell. You really were trying to get your Heath Ledger on. I see you. I see you. But yeah, Penguin sees him just sort of walking slow. It's very Michael Myers, and then the way that Robert Pattinson even tilts his head over to the side of the car to look through the window, was a broken glass window now, but he looks aside over the car to look at Penguin as he's terrified, almost the same way that Michael Myers kind of like looks at people like very slowly, like this and like this and like, and I was like, okay, we're getting borderline horrors here. We're getting borderline horror, and I think it's alluded to so much, especially in that first scene, that he does essentially want to be the boogeyman for bad guys in Gotham. He wants to sort of control Gotham with fear, and also the fear of violence as well. He wants to instill that. He wants to instill the same fear that the bad guys and villains of Gotham instill in others. He wants to instill that fear in them. And that's what he'd say the bat signal is for and all that stuff. And it's really like ominous and just dark, and I love it. But yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about as well was there's a lot of foreshadowing in that first scene as well, when he's beating up these like gang members who are spray painting their faces or skulls. There's a little bit of foreshadowing there because there's a kid there, and we first meet him first actually. He's sort of being initiated into this gang, so he only has half of his face painted, right? So he has half skull face, half his other face. You can tell that he's a kid, Latino, maybe like he might be Afro-Latino, I'm not sure, he might be Puerto Rican or something like that, possibly. And he's kind of standing back, just sort of like, he's not really involved in the mugging of this Asian man, right? But, you know, he's sort of like, it's almost foreshadowing also juxtaposition of Batman as well, because Batman is kind of also half in, half out. He's half in the darkness, half out. He hasn't fully gone to the lengths that other people have gone in terms of killing people or killing the innocent or like really like jumping on that ledge, but he's still there. And that's sort of like the foreshadowing of like, this is a decision that Batman will have to make. That's why I say it's foreshadowing. That the kid is almost like a symbolic foreshadowing of these are the two sides of Batman, and he will have to pick a side. He'll have to decide which side he wants to be on and how he's going to be, right? Just like this kid has to decide who he's going to be. And he, of course, the kid decides after he, you know, Batman beats up the people that he's supposed to be initiated to a gang with, he runs off and runs away, right? I think there is a lot of, I want to do a little bit of comparison here between Pattinson and Bale a little bit, in terms of their interpretations of Batman. Bale, to me, I mean, of course, we're getting a younger Bruce here. We're getting a much younger Bruce Wayne when we're dealing with Batman here, with Robert Pattinson's Batman. When we get to Christian Bale's Batman, we are, of course, dealing with a more like, I don't say middle age, but close to like maybe like late 30s, early 40s, somewhere around there, like something like 30s, late 30s, early 40s, somewhere around there. We're dealing with Christian Bale. We're dealing with the man who has come to terms with not only how to sort of encompass or not be Batman, but somebody who has also come to terms with how to maneuver as Bruce Wayne, right? And this Batman, this Robert Pattinson's Batman, is a lot more, he feels a lot more inexperienced, not in terms of being Batman, but in terms of being Bruce Wayne. And I think that is highlighted a lot, that this version of Bruce Wayne, he's not really Bruce Wayne, he's completely and totally Batman the entire time. He doesn't really, from his suit to his real self, you know, to his like when he's not wearing a suit or not wearing the mask, right? There is no difference. There really isn't a difference. Whereas Christian Bale's, there is a difference. There is a difference when Christian Bale puts on the suit. He can be sort of his unhinged, crazy self. right? But then when he takes off the suit and he puts on his other suit, like his business suit, he becomes like the professional. He puts on the face of like, you know, plays the political game, plays the like everyday. I mean, not every one. I guess I'm gonna say everyday billionaire. Everyday billionaire, but he plays that role of like, oh, I'm just your neighborhood billionaire. I'm just your neighborhood billionaire, just walking around doing philanthropic stuff. Da 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 da. Whereas Robert Pattinson's, there is clearly a tension with him having to become that Bruce Wayne. He's not ready yet. He's not in that space or that mind frame yet. He is completely and totally Batman. When he takes off the suit, he's still Batman. When he puts on the suit, he's still Batman. It really doesn't matter. He's completely encompassed in his unhingedness, right? He hasn't become that. And even he has his conversations with Alfred, which I really enjoy at the beginning of this film, where like he's telling him that, you know, he has to essentially, you know, become a Wayne, is what he tells them. You're gonna have to, like, you know, uphold your family name. And he's like, I don't give a fuck, I don't give a shit about it. And there's business endeavors to attend to in terms of your father's businesses and stuff like that, and all these people you have to do, da 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 da. And he really doesn't give a shit. Like, he's like, no, I'm in sulking and dark and my gloomness and da 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 da, and leave me alone. And so I really enjoyed the contrast from going from Christian Bale. I mean, I completely skipped over I completely skipped over Ben Affleck's older man, like, you know, Batman, like, I would say like late 40s, 50s, right? Batman. So we got like three in the last 10 years. We've gotten like 3 renditions of Batman, all very different from each other, which I enjoy all 3. I enjoy the contrastness of all 3 of those. But yeah, one thing that I also want to highlight about this film is that there is a lot of parallelism, and I think there is a lot of subtle but great nuanced commentary through parallelism throughout the entirety of this film. So parallelism is essentially 2 things in comparison with one another that are also congruent and also similar in nature as well to one another as well. So like, think about parallel lines. They, you know, if you learned that in class, I don't know. I don't know if you learned that in like your algebra class or not, but like parallel lines are the same because they're 2 lines facing each other. And the same thing goes in terms of like talking about like literature and stuff like that in art, in terms of making things parallel to each other. And I feel like there's a lot of parallelism between Batman and a lot of other characters in this film. I'm going to start with the mayor's son. So the mayor is the first one to get killed by the Riddler. It's funny because, well, I'm going to start with the mayor's son and the Riddler as well. The Riddler is looking through the binoculars at the mayor as his son is getting ready, you know, as the mayor is getting his son ready for Halloween, right? And he's doing his heavy breathing. It's very like, I mean, of course it's stalker-ish, but it's also, there is a sort of, there was a sexual undertone that felt like there was an erotic sexual undertone that was there. That was very interesting to me. The heavy breathing felt like there was a sexual undertone. And the Riddler actually kills the mayor. There feels like there is a sexual undertone there as well, because he's like, he like sort of straddles him as he's over top of his body, sort of beating his head in. And there is this sort of like, I don't know, like there is this very weird there was this very weird like sexual nature to the Riddler's killing, almost like a sexual violation or sex crime. It felt like had been committed as well. Like some type of violation had been committed. I don't know how to explain it. It just felt that way. And then we sort of, later in the film, we see Batman looking through his binoculars at Selena Kyle and her friend Annika as like, you know, she's getting dressed and stuff like that, which of course is a clear, I think a much more clear understanding or a clear representation of like a sexual undertone, because he's watching her get undressed and stuff like this. Like there was definitely a parallelism there between like the Riddler being unhinged and crazy, and then Batman, you know, being unhinged and crazy and psychopathic as well, and a little bit stalkerish, and also the sexual undertone. There was like definitely a lot of parallelism. And also of course when you get to the end, there is that whole scene, and I've seen people already sort of posting it, that scene where the Riddler, you know, essentially says we're the same, right? And Batman realizes, holy shit, maybe we are the same, and he gets scared and he's like, no, we're not insane, you're a psychopath, I'm not a psychopath. You know, he sort of almost snaps him in a way into like, oh shit, like I am kind of like, ooh, you know, I am kind of crazy. Not to like stigmatize, use that word, but just saying, like, he is kind of like off his rocker, right? And there's a bunch of that same parallelism between them two, but particularly between Batman and the mayor's son, right? So when the mayor gets killed by the Riddler, of course, Commissioner Gordon gets called, played by Jeffrey Wright. Commissioner Gordon calls Batman to come and view the body and view the crime scene, right? And of course he sees the little boy sitting there, and there is this moment where they look at each other, and they also have other moments as well, because there's this other moment where Batman is looking at like the record, because he carries these like, I don't know what, these lenses in his eyes that record everything that he sees. He puts them in his eyes, these contact lenses, and they are, you know, of course they work in terms of they record everything that he has done or everything that he sees, just in case he misses something that he didn't see but it might have picked up on the camera. And so he looks back over these every night, and one of the images that it stops on when he's looking at it is the little boy sitting there sad because of course his father has died. And it clearly, this is a moment where he gets into a little bit of an argument with Alfred as well about him taking on the family name and, you know, his family being killed as well. There's parallelism there too, which we talk about as well, in terms of like, I'm glad that Matt Reeves didn't just, there's been a lot of criticism, why do we have to continuously see Bruce Wayne's family get murdered every time we start a new sort of like interpretation of Batman? We have to like always recreate that scene. There's been a lot of criticism about that, and instead what Matt Reeves does is he recreates that scene, he recreates that moment, but through this boy and through the mayor. So like, you know, the boy becomes an orphan because he loses his father, right? And his father gets killed, right? Like, not right in front of him, but of course he does end up seeing the body when he gets home and stuff like that. The boy finds his father murdered. Same thing with sort of a direct parallelism, sort of, with the Bruce Wayne and his traumatic experience, you know, seeing his father. Well, I guess in this one, I don't know if he saw his father get killed or not, but his parents get killed or not, but, you know, he ended up being an orphan because his father's got killed as well. And there is the parallelism I wanted to note between the boy and the mayor's son and Batman is just not because, well, yes, they're both orphans, yes, they both have similar stories in terms of their parents being murdered, but also I feel like it was a great representation, a symbolic representation of the fact that Batman, Bruce Wayne, is still a little boy inside. Honestly, like, that's what it felt like when they put it in that circle. They put the little boy's picture of the video of him looking sad, that's recording from the contact lenses, looking sad, and Bruce Wayne, you know, walks away, and then that photo is right there. It sort of was great representation of the fact that this is how he truly feels inside, that everything else is kind of ego and bravado, right? This tough exterior that he is presenting to the world, this dark, you know, sort of luminous, like rough bravado is the ego. And when he moves away and you can see the picture of the boy, that's how he actually feels inside. He's still a little boy inside. He's still at that place in his life. And also the fact that he's still kind of like, yeah, at that place in his life, he's still mentally when his parents got killed. He's still there. And I thought that was a great representation right there. And I also thought it was great symbolic representation as well when Batman goes to the funeral of the mayor and he has to save the little boy because a car has ran through into the funeral cathedral or whatever, where his father is being put to rest, and the little boy sitting up front. And then of course we see Bruce Wayne, rush in to like save the boy, but kind of in a way it feels like this is where Bruce starts to like wake up and realize things and there's a little bit of healing. It's almost like he saves himself, which I thought was really nice, as well as like just sort of a symbolic like representation of that, saving oneself, saving one's inner child, right? And protecting one's inner child. I thought that was really nice sentiment with that, even though it was really quick and really fast, and also very like exciting in terms of like just action. I also feel like there's parallelism between, of course, Batman and Selina Kyle. Of course, Selina Kyle, we find out that she is also an orphan, right? That they share that similarity between each other. And she has been orphaned because also her mother was killed as well. And she was abandoned. She was abandoned by her father, but I think her father might have ended up killing her mother. I think it's kind of gray on what happened to her mother in terms of who killed her. It could have been another man that was probably sexually harassing her, and that's another sexual harassment, and also like the sexual undertones of that is, like I said before, with the Riddler. I saw it with Batman. Well, no, he wasn't sexually harassing her, but he was kind of being a little pervy. And then Selina Kyle and also her friend Annika, there is this whole like sexual assault and sexual harassment thing that's going on with Selina Kyle because she works, they are girls that work in Penguin's Club, and they are all constantly around very powerful men who constantly, want sexual favors from them and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's a little gray in terms of who actually killed Selina's mother. Was it the Falcon? Was it her father? Or was it some other man that was just in the club that sometime and just sort of not went too far, but sexually assaulted her. But yeah, they share that in common. Only Selina Kyle definitely feels like she is definitely more deeper into the darkness than Batman. And he also feels like he has to sort of pull her out as well, which I like that storyline as well. That clearly she is further down that road of she wants to jump over the ledge, and then Batman is trying to sort of save her from like completely jumping over the ledge. But it feels like Selina definitely has more of an affinity towards the darkness, right? Than Batman does. Batman just sort of plays in the darkness, while Selina really lives that life. And there's a lot of conversations even about classism and stuff like that when she like calls him out on this shit in terms of like, why don't you want to do this? Why don't you care about Annika? Why don't you care about this? And she's like, you must have grew up rich or something. You must have grew up rich or something, because there's no way that you could be from where I'm from and da-da-da-da-da, right? Like she gives this whole spiel like so it kind of feels like Selina grew up in the darkness, while even though, yes, Batman and Bruce Wayne has suffered this very traumatic loss in terms of his family, he still was very sheltered, right? He did not grow up in the darkness. He just sort of plays there, right? Instead of going to a therapist and dealing with his mental issues. There is a lot of parallelism between Commissioner Gordon and Batman. I really love the scenes with them both like doing this detective work. Like I said before, I really haven't seen a lot of like detective Batman, like a highlight on that in the other renditions or films. And I really felt like Matt Reeves wanted to highlight that specifically, that Batman is a detective, and he could have been a detective, or he could still be a detective if he wasn't so cuckoo. Right? Like Commissioner Gordon clearly is the healthier version of Batman, or at least it feels like Commissioner Gordon is doing the same like detective work next to him. They're doing it together, but it feels Commissioner Gordon, he is healthy. He is not completely encompassed by like a traumatic experiences. He has not become completely embittered. He is the healthy version of what Batman could possibly be in real life if he would get his mind right. He could be like a detective. He could be like a Detective Gordon, right? And I really like that juxtaposition as well. I also feel like there is some classism talks and classism commentary when it comes to Officer Martinez. So Officer Martinez, when he first sees Batman come to the mayor's crime scene where he's been murdered, right? He calls Batman a freak, right? And he completely like shuns him. All the officers do. They look at him like he's a nut job, like he's crazy. Like, what are you doing, What are you doing, Gordon? Even bringing this man here. He's an outsider. Da 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 da. Right? And and then opposite that, we see when Bruce is not wearing, when Robert Pattinson is not wearing the mask, right? The Bat mask. Martinez sees him as Bruce Wayne, is like, hey, Mr. Wayne, hey, Mr. Wayne. So almost like him putting on the mask puts him in sort of like, makes him feel like bottom dweller. Like he feels like definitely like he's on par with like the rest of the people that live down in like the bottom dwelling society of Gotham, like Martinez. And then when he sees Bruce Wayne, because he recognizes him as the heir to the $1 billion family that was one of the two families that sort of like founded Gotham in the first place. Oh, hey, Mr. Wayne. Hey, Mr. Wayne. And it's sort of that was a very subtle commentary to me on how money buys you respect, right? Like, because Batman hasn't changed. Like, Bruce hasn't changed. Like, his demeanor is the same. Like I said before, he hasn't really learned how to be Bruce. How to be the political, suave, I can walk in rooms and smile and put on the face and da-da-da-da-da, be a gentleman. He just hasn't learned how to be that Bruce yet. So, like, he sees him, like, it's just sort of a very interesting commentary on, like, I thought it was a very subtle commentary on how money can buy you respect, how money can like garner you things that you don't even really deserve, that you haven't really even earned, right? And how just being sort of associated with a sort of bottom caste, right, can sort of just grant a level of disrespect that you get, which I thought was really great commentary, really subtle, and not like, it doesn't beat you over the head with it. Which I also like. I like commentary that is subtle and that you have to catch, and it's there, but it doesn't beat you over the head like you're in a class like Sociology 101. So in terms of talking about the mask, right, in terms of taking off the mask and putting on the mask, so Martinez calls Batman a freak. And I also think that there's always been a queerness to superheroes, right? And I also think that term freak was purposeful, and the fact that he didn't call him something else, but he called him a freak, a weirdo, this idea that what he is doing is abnormal or disgusting, or just something to sort of like look down your nose at, like, I can't believe he's doing this, or can't believe he does this for a living, or can't believe he acts like this, da 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 da. Definitely there was a lot of queer undertones, like a lot of like gay undertones coming out here under that as well. And there's always been a queerness to superheroes in terms of like the mask sort of hiding your true identity, right? Like the mask is weirdly, it hides your identity but allows you to be yourself, and then your regular self is like the ego. It's so interesting. It's just very strange how it sort of lines up. It's sort of all superheroes kind of have this queerness to them, right? But I also think there was even a broader sort of conversation there with the mask, because there is commentary like when Batman is talking to Commissioner Gordon about one of the cops, and Gordon says, "Oh, he was pretending to be in the mob or something. Not in the mob, but he was pretending to be a crime lord or something like that." No, and Batman's, "Oh, he's pretending to be a cop." And so this idea that people wear masks every day is just that Batman's is more flamboyant, right? Like Batman's is more, I was gonna say black man's, but Batman's is more out there and showy and flashy for everyone to see, but everybody puts on a mask every day. These cops are putting on masks every day because they're all corrupt, essentially, which I love all these cops are corrupt thing that was going on. All cops are bad, like commentary that was going on in this film. And except for Commissioner Gordon, of course, which I thought was interesting because the only black cop, right, is the only good one. Which we can get into that, but everybody wears masks. The cops are wearing masks. When they put on that uniform, they are wearing a mask. They are not really here or care to protect and serve. They are here to, like, they're just trying to save face. Like, everybody's trying to save face, and almost even the Riddler, in a way, is trying to unmask a lot of these elected and law officials, right, and high-ranking officials, whether they be politicians or whether they be in law enforcement, right? He's also trying to unmask. So there's also a parallelism in that way. Like, Batman is trying to unmask people in terms of figuring out the truth, but also the Riddler is trying to unmask as well. The only dislike that I have about this movie, and it's just me personally, in terms of social commentary, in terms of, like, this is where I felt like the social commentary fell short. It does deal with Thomas Wayne, so we sort of get set up to believe at first that Thomas Wayne maybe not be as good of a guy as we probably everybody sort of suspected in terms of his philanthropy, right? I feel like the Joker movie that came out not too long ago also kind of hit on this as well, but it definitely leaned more into Thomas Wayne as a villain, as a sort of rich, greedy billionaire that, sort of took advantage of people. This one leans into that a little bit, the possibility, but then it snatches it back, right? Like, so it leans into this idea that sort of, like, not this idea, what Thomas Wayne did is that he had these family secrets about his wife that this reporter was going to reveal, and he had the reporter essentially killed because he went and talked to the Falcon, and he said he essentially told, what is told at first is that he told him to go kill him, but what we learn later, I guess, from Alfred gives this whole speech about, like, no, the Falcon is lying, your father, yes, he made a mistake, but he just wanted him to scare him, he didn't want him to actually kill him, which I think is just such a lame take back. I just feel like I just felt like at that moment, I felt like that was just unnecessary. I hate when people lean into something and then take it back. Like, either go all the way or just keep if you want Thomas Wayne to be a philanthropic character, just keep him a philanthropic character. But don't do this whole thing where he might be a bad person. And then, no, that's not true. Thomas Wayne was a saint and he just made a mistake. I just don't like, I hate when that happens personally. I don't like it. It's very annoying to me, because it's almost like it feels to me like a fear, like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't want to make him look that bad. Like, it just feels like that. It doesn't feel like a very intentional move. It just feels like from the author or the writer, just feels like I don't want to go that far, which is just sort of like cowardly to me. Like, just go all the way or don't. Like, choose where you want to be. But it also annoyed me because I felt like Bruce Wayne Robert Pattinson's Batman was going to have to, like, grapple with, because he's called out on white privilege a couple times by Selina, and also classism by Selina as well, and also by, I think, somebody else as well too, and I can't remember who right now, but the fact, by the Riddler. He's called out, even though I'm not gonna spoil too much, but yeah, he's called out by the Riddler in one aspect as well, in terms of, like, talking about how Bruce Wayne gets to sort of, he's not a real orphan because, how could he be, he didn't have to, like, live with the rats, and, like, we really suffered, like, he was protected even in his, he was an orphan, yes, but he didn't really live the life that we lived, and yet he still gets more, he gets the sympathy, but we don't. Like, we're actually orphans suffering, and we suffered, and we were hungry, and we were poor, and we were downtrodden, and we had to live with rats and roaches and and but he gets all the sympathy as an orphan, even though he's rich and has everything handed to him. And how is this fair? Which are some good points. So he's called out on his like privilege in terms of not only his race, but also his privilege in terms of money throughout the film. And it felt like him finding out that his father did this terrible thing in terms of for political gain, right? Killing a man for political gain. That he was going to have to grapple with that, right? He was going to have to grapple with that sort of like privilege. Also the fact that, you know, he might not come from like the best family, that I feel like could really be a great character building moment for him. And instead is taken back by Alfred, who says, no, your father was still a good man. He just wanted him to scare him, which I just think is such bullshit. Like that's such a bullshit excuse. Another thing, he just wanted him to scare him. Yeah, he went to a mob boss because he went to a mob boss to handle a situation because he just wanted him to scare him. Like, come on now. Like, this sounds like bullshit. Come on now. But I felt like it messed with a great possible character building moment for Bruce to really grapple with the fact of his privilege and grapple with the fact of his the race issues as well that are going on here, that are clearly being talked about as well here. And yeah, he doesn't happen. Instead, he still gets to sort of, he still has that moment, but it doesn't feel genuine. It feels like, oh, I am a good white man. Like that's what it feels like. Oh, I am a good person. Oh, I do come from good people. Oh, I do come from a good lineage. Oh, I do come from a good background. Oh, there are good billionaires. And it's just like, come on, dude. Like, Matt Reeves, like, you could have just stay the course. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. And it kind of really, it doesn't bug me enough to make me hate the movie. Because there's so much to love about this movie. I can't hate the movie, period, anyway. But it did bug me a little bit that we didn't get that moment. And maybe he decided to take it back because the other Joker movie was doing that, so they were like, maybe we shouldn't do that because we don't want to feel like we're copying somebody else. I understand that as an artist, possibly feeling like I don't want to copy somebody else or copy what somebody else is doing, so like, let's take that back or something like that. But I still feel like just like, you know, what's the thing, be either hot or cold, don't be lukewarm, right? But lastly, I've been talking about here for 50 minutes. Last thing I want to talk about though is Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers has now like kind of cleaned house in terms of a lot of their shitty people that were involved in the whole screwing up Snyder's whole plans, and which I really wish I still could see, like, but unfortunately that's a no-go. But apparently they have cleaned house. They are under new management. Apparently, from what I've been reading, right? And I saw somebody post this. They were saying that, you know, the Batman is the proof that this movie is proof that we do not need, you know, interconnected universes and interconnected stories. Like, you can have stories that exist. You can have movies and franchises that exist in their own films that are not interconnected with each other, even though they are part of like the DC Comics universe or a comic universe, right? Like, you do not have to have interconnected stories. Like, if it's just a good story, it's a good story. And I really felt like I like that tweet. And I also feel like Warner Brothers should really lean into that more. Like, getting creators, getting directors and writers who want to make their own versions of many different characters that aren't interconnected with each other, that are just their own standalone film that we can also enjoy. I don't need, you know, be the anti-Marvel that you should be. Be rated R, be darker, be less humorous, be not interconnected. And I think that is what they should lean into, because clearly it works. It works and people like it. And also, if you're not interconnected, you don't have to worry about like these 10-year plans or 8-year, 20-year plans, like Marvel does, right? And also, you don't hinder, the creative work of the director, of the actors, of everybody on set is not hindered by, we have to make sure we line up. And when we're writing, we have to make sure we line up with this film. I feel like that is such a hindrance. I think that's one of the reasons why Marvel feels so stagnant and bland, is because they have to literally connect all of these different things and try to make them work, and it's just like the characters come off bland, the story comes off bland, there's too many jokes that aren't even fucking funny, the stories are half-assed, it really, I feel like, hinders even if there is some interesting aspects to some of the films, they are completely hindered by the fact that they have to constantly adhere to this 20-year fucking plan that Disney and Marvel have for the future of these characters and these stories. And you should be the anti that. Warner Brothers should be the anti that, and I think it'll work great for them. And I think could be their lane. But that's just what I want to leave here with today. I thought that I already talked about Jeffrey Wright doing a great job. I feel like he really, in terms of his rendition of Jeffrey's rendition of Commissioner Gordon, and I forget the other guy's name, who was also, he played in Harry Potter, I think it was, but the Christian Bale's Commissioner Gordon, I felt like there was a little bit of more softness to Commissioner Gordon that I really enjoyed. It was a little bit more fatherly. It felt like, I don't know, I just felt this weird sort of, I don't know, maybe not fatherly, but I did feel like there was a fatherly thing there going on there, and also a fatherly thing going on with Alfred, of course, there too, which I liked as well. But yeah, it felt softer. It felt like a very gentle masculinity that I enjoyed. A gentle masculinity that also wasn't. Commissioner Gordon's not a punk or a bitch. He's not afraid to get tough or get rough with people, right? But it definitely felt like more of a gentler, masculine touch to Commissioner Gordon that I didn't expect. I liked, of course, Zoe Kravitz's rendition of Catwoman as well. I think she just naturally fits the part. She just naturally fits the part of Selena Kyle. I don't even think she had to do too much acting. I think she just naturally kind of is this very mysterious sort of character mysterious sort of person in real life. She has this mystery about her, and I think she just sort of carries that onto the film very effortlessly and naturally. I think between honestly, my favorite Catwomans are Michelle Pfeiffer. Those are the ones I've seen, right? Michelle Pfeiffer. I haven't really seen Eartha Kitt's Catwoman. I've heard about it, but that is before my time, right? So I saw Michelle Pfeiffer. I saw Halle Berry. I also saw Anne Hathaway. But even though the Halle Berry movie wasn't the greatest, I thought her rendition of Catwoman was really nice and really great and really just sultry and sexy. And of course, Michelle Pfeiffer, the same thing. And I think that Zoe Kravitz, though, she has a much more, while there's a more flamboyant and more overtly sexual, they're just overtly sexual, right? And definitely a much more flamboyant is the best way I can put it, more in your face. Hers is a little bit more subtle and laid back. There's a subtle laid backness to her rendition of Catwoman that I really enjoyed. It didn't do too much, but but that's just sort of how she naturally is. It felt not that theirs didn't feel natural, it just felt like they were playing up the sexuality part of it, right? And hers felt more sensual, if that makes any sense. But yeah, yeah, and I also liked Robert Pattinson's rendition of Batman as well. I think he got it right. Like, I think he was a perfect fit for this. I think Matt Reeves was very strategic in picking both, all of them, like Jeffrey Wright, Zoe Kravitz, Robert Pattinson. One thing that I want to note here that I forgot to talk about was this idea of violence and fear as tools of power. And then the Batman having to realize essentially that he doesn't want to just be like the villains and use their tools to sort of keep people safe, but he also has to sort of instill hope. He has to, he has to instill hope into people as well. He just can't instill fear. Fear and violence can only beget more, essentially, fear and violence. And he learns that a little bit. It can only do so much. At some point, you have to instill hope in people. You have to instill faith in people. And I think that was a really good message at the end of the movie as well. But I've been on here too long. Let me know what you guys think about this movie. You are welcome to disagree. I am not the end-all, be-all of thought, right? So you're allowed to disagree, and we can have conversation as long as it's respectful. Also, let me know what you would like me to review also here as well as if you want me to talk about certain things over in the podcasting station or podcasting sort of medium that is still on this channel, right? If you wanted me to talk about other things there. But yeah, I'll see y'all next time for the next video, and stay safe.